Alright, in this video I'm going to be tying the Shad Fly. It's simply called the Shad Fly. This is a fly that's part of the Pfeiffer collection. The original pattern calls for a standard length size 6 hook. I think it's a little more difficult to tie that way, so I'm actually going to demonstrate this with a 2x long size 6. So in the vise I have a Daiki 1710 and a size 6. I'm going to be tying this with some Danville's flat waxed nylon and red, and I'm going to start by laying down a thread base, and I want to give myself enough room at the beginning of the fly to tie on some hourglass eyes at the end. So I'm going to start 2 eye lengths behind the eye and go ahead and advance our thread down to the barb. For the tail, we're going to use a matched pair of duck quills, and I just basically want to take out a section for the tail about that long from each side, so that's what I'm going to do. A little difficult to do that on camera. So just cut out even sections on both quills. And you just want to match your tips up. So I've got my tips matched on the duck quills, and I'm going to go ahead and pinch them on the top of the hook, and I want to hold on to the shank of the hook and the quills and do a pinch wrap, hold tight onto the quill and just pull straight down, and that looks pretty good. You don't want to make any wraps backwards, just forwards. And that looks good. And then I'm going to trim off my excess. Continue to advance my thread forward. And my only problem with using quills for tails is you end up with a big bump at the back of the fly. So I'm just going to take my thread back up to the starting point or tie-in, and then back down a couple times just to help even that out, so you end up with a nice even looking body. Alright, for the body I'm going to tie in some medium oval tinsel. I'm going to go ahead and tie that in at our tie-in point. Or starting tie-in point, I should say. And same thing, that's just to keep an even body. So I'm going to take my thread down to the tail and then back up to my starting point. And I want to use the rotary feature in my vise to help wrap this, so I'm just going to make a couple of half hitches in my thread. And then start to wrap my tinsel. Just take your time. This is when having a bobbin holder on your vise would make things a lot easier. And I'm going to stop the tinsel just short of where I started. See if I can unwind my thread here. And then capture the silver tinsel. And snip the excess. Now, to help protect the tinsel, I like to just hit it with some Sally Hansen's and let it dry. Alright, next we're going to tie in a hackle, and it calls for a sparse white hackle, and I like to use a saddle hackle that's fairly webby, something like that. And since it calls for a sparse hackle, I'm going to go ahead and prepare it by stripping away the barbs on the underside of the feather. Alright, so I have my hackle prepared. I've stripped all the barbs from the bottom part of the feather. I'm just going to go ahead and tie it in tip first. Advance our thread and then snip away the excess. And then I'm going to go ahead and make a few wraps, maybe three to four, depending on the hackle. That looks pretty good. Couple trap back here, just stroke them back. Just take your time. I think I'll take one more turn. And then capture with our thread. and then snip away our excess. So I like to strip the barbs back and then just make a couple of thread turns in front of them, and that just helps that hackle lay back. That looks good. We're going to build a false head with some chenille, and it's going to be a red ultra chenille, pretty fine diameter. And tie that in good and tight so it doesn't spin. And we'll just give a couple wraps of the chenille and then capture it with our thread. Alright. Last, we're going to tie on either a bead chain, or in this case an hourglass eye. I'm going to tie in a gold 5/32, and you want to do that on top of the hook. And we'll go ahead and whip finish behind the hourglass eyes. And snip our thread.